Have you ever wondered if animals can feel complex emotions like us? How would we relate to them if we knew they are capable of experiencing pleasure, pain, joy, and fear? Do you think your relationship with them would change if we told you they can? In this, our final episode of the series, we take a deep dive into the ocean and hear from a unique sea creature crusader who gives us her extraordinary insight into sentience she has seen firsthand, and we hear her take on what we can all do to help. I'm Johnny Bunyan, and from World Animal Protection, this is Animals Are Calling. The ocean covers 2/3 of our planet. It's an expansive habitat for some of the world's smallest and largest animals. Whales and dolphins are charismatic emblems of our seas, and they've inspired millions of people to care about our oceans. One of them is Hanli Prinsloo, whose first-hand experience of these marine mammals has made her a lover and protector of our oceans. Based in Cape Town in South Africa, Hanli has spent years exploring and deep diving into the ocean to see sentient marine life in their natural habitats. She's the founder of I Am Water Ocean Conservation, and I began by asking her why she set it up in the first place.
My background is in social political storytelling through filmmaking, which led me to really a conservation mindedness that brings community into the forefront. My personal connection to the ocean is through freediving, both as a competitive freediver, but also as an explorer of wild spaces with the great goal of interacting with big animals. So for me, freediving with dolphins, whales, manta rays, sharks has always been a dream come true. My father was a horse whisperer, so the big interactions with big animals, I think, was always inevitable. And every time I came back to Cape Town, to South Africa from my travels, I saw the need for more people, more South Africans to have access to the ocean. And because of our political past and because of various reasons, the ocean space in South Africa and in many parts of the world is a very divided space. And I set up the I Am Water Foundation to really open up the opportunity for South Africans of all walks of life to have access to the ocean, particularly school children from underserved coastal communities. And that's what we do at I Am Water. We open eyes underwater. And with that knowledge and with that experience comes a love and an internal motivation to protect.
Fascinating. Briefly, for those people out there who may not know what free diving means, can you just quickly explain that?
Free diving is the sport or the activity of exploring below the surface of the ocean on one single breath of air. So no tanks, minimal equipment, one giant breath in and down you go. And as a sport in free diving, we compete in depth, distance, or time. But for me, freediving is much more than a competitive sport. It's a way of being in and with the ocean on one single breath of air. I can hold my breath for around 6 minutes. And I've been down to 65 meters just swimming down with my monofin, which is like a dolphin tail, and back up again. So freediving is all about finding yourself and your body in the ocean on its own terms.
Right, amazing. Okay. You spend much of your time in the water seeing marine animals in their natural habitat. How has this experience shaped your thoughts on our connection as a whole with wild animals?
It's a fascinating thing getting to interact with big animals underwater on one breath. You know, when you're in a safari vehicle or meeting big animals on land, there's an element of risk. And you need to stay in the vehicle and you need to keep your distance, from wild animals. Whereas in the ocean, there's no fences, there's no vehicle. You get off the boat or you get off the beach and the whale can come right up to you. The dolphins can surround you. The sharks come eye to eye with you. So there's a true connection without boundaries that happens when you're in the water that I think is quite unique. My very best moments of my life are those that I've spent underwater connecting with animals. There's a meeting of intelligence that goes beyond anything I've experienced on land, and a real acceptance that leaves you changed forever when you've encountered one of these great animals underwater.
Having only spoken to Hanli for a few minutes, it was clear that her love of the ocean and the experience of seeing marine life up close was inextricably linked. Seeing as she spent many hours in the ocean, I asked her if she could share any profound underwater experiences where she had witnessed sentience firsthand.
I'll share two experiences. In February 2020, I went back to Mozambique to free dive with the pods of Indo-Pacific bottlenose dolphins that I've spent over a decade free diving with and teaching people free diving with. But on this particular trip, I was 7 months pregnant with my little girl. And I have read and heard that dolphins, through their echolocation, can observe and see the baby inside you if you were to swim with them pregnant. And I was given the opportunity to travel up and go and meet these dolphins who I've known for a very long time. They're resident wild dolphins in this area. And I've swum with them many a time where they come up and they circle and they're curious and they're interested. And this experience I had getting off the boat with this giant bump, I mean, I was a very, very large 7-month pregnant mama. I got in the water and these dolphins approached me out of the blue. And initially it felt like a normal dive with these dolphins. And then the second they noticed that I was pregnant, I knew it. They started clicking differently. They started behaving differently. They came and circled super close around me. They were scanning my belly. They literally came and hung in front of me, moving their rostrum, their nose area, so to speak, up and down, clicking, 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 scanning this, like looking at what is inside of me. And dolphins name each other, right? Every dolphin has a unique name, a first name and a family name, and they greet each other. And they started clicking and making these unusual clicking sounds, naming my little girl inside of me. And I always feel that the first persons to see my daughter were actually these wild dolphins. And the way they responded to me is a testament to their powerful social bonds, like the pregnant female is incredibly important in the matriarchal society of dolphins. And to actually experience that care and that awareness of them around me being the pregnant female in the pod, I just had tears inside my mask. I just cried through that whole dive because it was just such a special moment of being in such a powerful and vulnerable state, being pregnant, surrounded by these incredibly intelligent, gentle, and thoughtful creatures.
And on that, I mean, that's incredible. I mean, what an experience. But what is it about that experience that made you really confirm that they are sentient beings?
I mean, for me personally, animals have felt like non-human persons my whole life. But meeting animals like dolphins or whales underwater, the way they interact with us, the way they look at us, the eye contact they make, the way my mood affects their mood, the fact that they can pick up on my pregnancy and respond differently to me. These are animals with memory, with compassion, with a love for family, with the curiosity of the other, with courage and interest in new creatures in their environment. They are, to me, the embodiment of the concept of sentience.
Beautifully put. Let's talk a bit about I Am Water. It believes the well-being of humanity cannot be separated from the well-being of the wilderness. This is very true, especially when it comes to the health of our oceans. But could you elaborate a bit more on this?
When I started the I Am Water Foundation, we were often told that you're going to have to pick a lane. Are you an organization that works with education, or are you an organization that works with conservation? Because right now you're doing both. And donors don't like that. They need to either be supporting conservation or education. And this was 2010. And I remember saying to the team and my co-founders, like, we need to be doing both. We can't separate conservation and humanity. We need to educate and conserve at the same time, because we are so intricately connected. And it is both our challenge and our opportunity to be involved in protecting our wild spaces. You know, when we talk about ocean conservation, it's not a nice to have. The very oxygen we breathe comes from the ocean. The very fact that this beautiful planet is blue and livable by human beings is because we have an ocean on it. You know, as much as we want to explore Mars and other planets out there, this one is perfect. It's absolutely perfect. It's got everything we need. Why wouldn't we want to rather learn more about it and protect it? And a lot of that perfection comes from the ocean. And the well-being of the ocean is linked to the biodiversity and the animals and the plants and everything that's in it. And it's a whole world that, if we open people's eyes to understanding what's down there, we feel this impetus to want to be involved in its well-being. So we need the ocean for our very survival. The ocean needs our appreciation and understanding to change our negative, destructive behavior towards it.
Well, let's talk about that, because climate change is a massive topic. I'd love to know whether you've seen the ocean environment change due to climate change. And if so, how has this affected the behavior of the marine animals that you encounter?
Climate change is one of those challenges that we're all going to have to face in our lifetime. And it has intricate and far-reaching effects on all the ecosystems that we love and that we appreciate, you know, from the way it's affected kelp forests around the world with changing temperatures, the way it's affecting coral reefs through ocean acidification and other ways, the way it's affecting the movement of animals because of the change in the actual environment of the ocean and food sources, all the way to the change in weather, what that does to these careful reefs that have been built to protect, you know, that nature has so kindly created these barrier reefs around atolls and islands to protect us. And as climate change ramps up, the storms, these reefs won't be able to withstand them anymore, you know, and to our detriment. So climate change is all around us, and we'd like to stand on the beach and look out at the ocean and say, oh, it's so vast, it's so powerful, nothing could ever hurt it. But this is the one thing that truly can, and it's our very actions. So climate change is definitely, for me, one of those, in our lifetime, we need to be changing this and we need to be talking about this, because the health of our oceans isn't just something that's comfortable for us, it's something we need.
Like with Dr. Roberto and Dr. Miriam in episode 4, I was keen to understand if Hanli had seen any changes in behaviour of the animals as a result of climate change. While she couldn't be definitive in that regard, she's seen a change in the environment that marine life inhabit, as she explains.
Having had the opportunity to dive on coral reef systems that are alive with fish and home to hosts and hosts of creatures, and then returning and it's a wasteland, that's heartbreaking. And that's something that I don't feel particularly old. So it feels devastating to feel that within my short career of diving and traveling, I've been able to see these changes happen. You know, we've seen behavior change, but I wouldn't necessarily want to draw a line to it being because of climate change particularly, or necessarily that it's positive. You know, we have these 2 orcas who come into False Bay and predate on our white sharks. And that's probably got to do with something that's missing in their diet because of other reasons. But that's not necessarily a story of hope, because these buggers literally come in and only eat the liver and leave the rest of the shark. And so it's like not a good thing for anyone involved. And it's completely destroyed like the white shark, not population, because they're fine, they've just moved away, but the industry. which is fascinating. I think when it comes to the ocean adapting to climate change and animals adapting their behavior to climate change, the ocean is a more difficult place to study this in, right? Because a lot of this change will happen in places and in ways that we can't observe. There's already so many things we don't know about the ocean that we're still learning. So to actually observe this kind of adaptation that could be positive to affect climate change, I think in a base case scenario, the creatures we love will survive. I think there's also, we might want to put a little bit too much of the responsibility on them if they also have to adapt to the problems that they haven't caused. That's kind of on us, right?
Totally.
So I do think that the ocean, for me, however, is the greatest place of hope. It's greatly resilient. It's more interconnected than anything we can imagine, because it's literally particles touching here, touching there, touching every creature in the ocean, right? Like they're all interconnected. So in that way, it's extremely powerful and resilient, but also that resilience comes with vulnerability, because connection makes you vulnerable as much as it makes you powerful. And that, to me, is the great strength of the ocean. It's both strong and soft at the same time. And that's why we can learn as much from the ocean as it can teach us. And I think if we can just stay in that space of humility and keep learning, hopefully we can make the change that needs to happen on time.
Yeah. Let's hope so. One of the interesting things about this series has been about hearing everyone's individual perspectives of seeing animals and understanding their sentience in different environments. And we've talked to a photographer whose sole job it is to go into very difficult conditions like factory farms and do undercover work to try and show the degradation of what animals do. We've talked to a travel agency who have gone above and beyond to try and change the perception of how it's actually the wrong thing to do to go to the elephant camps, and here's the alternative ways in which you can see animals in their natural habitat. I think perhaps what you've described almost kind of sounds like the best of every world. From the perspective of sentience, you mentioned your connection that you seem to have by looking them in the eye. How can you tell necessarily what they think of you, and why do they treat you potentially as one of their own? Because my basic brain would go, if I decided to go free dive to the ocean and look a shark in the eye, I'd expect it to eat me, but you're still sitting here alive.
Totally. The big creatures that live below the ocean surface have always held a lot of mystery and myth in our stories. Everything from Moby Dick, the killer whale, to the killer sharks in Jaws, to dolphins who rescue sailors, to, there's myth and mystery around what is below the ocean. And most of that is just that. It's myth and mystery. Sharks are not mindless killers. I've swum alongside all the biggest shark species in the world and made eye contact, and they're intelligent to a certain extent. They're also spectacular predators. And if I was on the menu, I wouldn't stand a chance, but I'm not, because they're not mindless killers. They're highly advanced and they know what their food sources are and should be. And, I'm a scrawny little thing covered in a natural rubber wetsuit, so I'm not really the best tasty morsel. A seal is much better, or a turtle, or, a big fish. And they know that because they're not mindless killers. And dolphins and whales and seals, they look at me and they go, she moves a little bit like us, maybe a little clumsy. She can hold her breath like us, not quite as long as us. She's curious. She wants to interact with us. She's clearly completely harmless. Interesting. And they come and explore because they're also curious, and this is their playground. So, and all dolphin species aren't the same, right? Bottlenose dolphins and spotted Atlantic dolphins are like flipping Labrador puppies. They'll surround you and play with you and want to be around you, whereas common dolphins and spinner dolphins are like, nah, I don't really need to play with you. You're kind of boring. I'm out of here. So it's also species specific, right? You get humpback whales who are super curious and they're singing completely enthralls us, and their babies are curious about us. And then you get other whale species who are like, nah, not that interested, like blue whales. I'm out of here. This is not cool. I don't want to play. So it's species specific, it's behavior specific. Sometimes it's even regionally specific. So that shows that these animals are interacting through their own choice and also in their own unique way. And to me, that is another, if we need it, proof of sentience, that this is a choice they make. But I do find that what freediving offers us, especially with these aquatic mammals, is that they recognize the same. Like, I am a breathing mammal coming down to play with them. We go up to breathe together, and they recognize that, right? So there's definitely a kinship when we freedive with them.
It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. What do you think we can all do to help? What kind of words of hope would you give, and ways in which you think the people listening to this can make a difference?
Often when we're faced with challenges like climate change that can just feel so much greater than ourselves and the effect it has on our ecosystems and animals, it's so important to reconnect with a sense of optimism and hope. And for me, the ocean, nature, animals, that's where hope and optimism lives. I can't act in a meaningful way to combat these issues if I don't connect with nature. These aren't problems I can solve behind my computer. That's often where the action happens. But the internal sense of motivation happens when I am in wilderness and in spaces in nature and with animals. And once we have that connection and we have that sense of drive that doesn't come from a place of fear or a place of hopelessness, I think our actions are more powerful. And then we can start deciding how we want to be a part of change. We can decide whether we're going to vote with our wallet in what we buy and how we consume. We can vote with what's on our plate, what we eat, and how we prepare it, and how we're part of the food chain. We can decide through using our network for influence. How can we influence decision makers? And can we, and in what way? And we can also decide how we're going to treat each other and ourselves and the animals and nature around us. And I think all these different ways are part of the solution. None of them are a silver bullet, but we definitely don't have to feel like we're outside of the problem without solutions. We're inside of it. We're part of the problem. We are also the solution. And you pick one of those things every morning and you work at it. And that's the only way to do it. One day at a time, making better choices.
Hanli's passion for animals and the ocean is infectious. Not only does she care about the life that exists within our seas, but through her work she's on a mission to educate and inform new generations of the importance of looking after the ocean, its inhabitants, and the planet as a whole. Her call to all of us to connect to animals and nature in person, thereby reinforcing the need to protect them, is a good way for all of us to think about playing our part. I hope in this series you've learned many things about animal sentience and about the difficult conditions that animals all over the world still face. We've met people from all walks of life who have told their stories, and in their own way, they're all striving to make a difference. Whether through investigation, research, education, campaigning and conservation, all of the people I've spoken to are united in World Animal Protection's cause to end animal cruelty and suffering forever. As this series draws to a close, I'll leave you with Hanli Prinsloo's powerful words on why it's so important to take animal sentience seriously.
This is not a human planet. This is a shared planet that belongs to all the creatures that live on it. It's not ours. And if we don't take the other animals that live on this planet with us seriously and respect their sentience and start to understand them and their value for who they are, not what they mean to us, we can't fully be human either, and we can't fully thrive on this planet. This is a shared planet, and we have the privilege of sharing it with all these sentient species and beings. And it's the greatest loss of all if we don't fully appreciate and experience that.
Animals Are Calling is a podcast from World Animal Protection. We're on a mission to change the way the world works, to end animal cruelty and suffering forever. If you want to help us with our work, then please visit worldanimalprotection.org. My thanks to Hanli Prinsloo and to everyone who has taken the time to share their knowledge and stories this series. If you've enjoyed this series of Animals Are Calling, then please leave a review and rate us. It's great to know what you think, but it also helps in other people finding us. This episode was written and mixed by me, Johnny Bunyan, and the series co-producer is Craig Ford at Pardon Our French Productions. The editorial producers are Amy Kondo and Nicola Perez. The executive producer is Georgie Bradbury. From all of us at World Animal Protection, thank you so much for listening, and goodbye.